Hi, everyone. This is Jackie Cooper with the Maryland Blockchain Association, as well as the Blockchain Legal Institute. Since everyone who is connected with the community knows that I am looking at both of those as ways to kind of educate everyone about what's going on in our decentralized community of blockchain. And today I'm really excited to be sharing a conversation with a individual who represents the green space and what they're doing to help with our community with blockchain and energy. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. You know, for those that have been following the Blockchain Legal Institute, you know that we've done a global summit about sustainability and blockchain. And the Green Project is something that we are looking at expanding on and to share with you what other good services and products are being done within our world, within the blockchain community. So, Mohan, how are you doing today?
Hi, Jacqueline. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Thrilled to be here on the show.
So share with everyone. I know that you are you're not at the moment based in Maryland, but where are you located?
So we're based out of Singapore, headquartered in Singapore, but we do a lot of travel. We have our manufacturing facility in Bangalore, which is in India, and we have a dev team sitting out of there. But most of our ops and sales happen out of Singapore. That's where the headquarters is. And yeah, right now we're more decentralized and more global than ever. So we have teams working out of Sweden. We have teams working out of US, Middle East, Dubai, Qatar, uh, Abu Dhabi, a lot of places. But primarily, I'm based out of between Singapore and the US.
I love it. I love it because of the fact that, especially for those that might not know, there are certain jurisdictions that are heavily regulated and they're looked at. And so, from that perspective, you know, for those that are trying to explore companies within the blockchain community, if they are based in certain countries, then you can have a little bit more trust about how things are proceeding because of the fact that they have to go through certain steps. How did you get into the blockchain space? And how did you get into the energy side of the blockchain space?
That's a great question. So for me, I've been in blockchain for over 7 years now. So I've been a very big evangelist of blockchain for transparency, blockchain for accountability, blockchain as for financial credibility and stuff. But the whole thing started because, especially for DeCharge, the story is very interesting. We did not set out to build a blockchain company, but rather blockchain was the ideal answer for getting this started. Because when we are looking at this highly evolving, very important, highly regulated space, which is energy, what what we are building is sort of creating the energy stations of the future, right? I mean, if you look at a traditional petrol station, like a fuel station, gas station, it would have taken about 40 or 50 years for them to have a distribution that they have today. But if in the early 60s or early 70s, if you see 1970s, you would not have that kind of distribution. It took like 30, 40 years to get to this level. We feel electric is at that place today where the oil industry was probably in the 80s, early 80s, with a lot of opportunity. And it's like if you look at the US market, especially, there's about 20% increase on electric vehicle sales from last year. So it's growing really fast. And while the companies are focusing on building the vehicle, nobody's working on the infrastructure. Apart from Tesla, there's no other company that's doing a very good Tesla, an infrastructure game. And by 2030, there's about 7 times more charging infra needed than there is today. So it's very tough for any one company to build it because it becomes very capital intensive because charging is a very capital intensive business. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to start off with something called as a distributed private infrastructure. It's called DPI. While we were building this out on DPI, and then we wanted to use blockchain as a layer for rewards, incentive structures. Because what we wanted to do is, since we're decentralizing this whole space, we wanted to have people with an additional parking space to be able to host a charging station. and then we take care of everything from end to end, like installation, setup, hardware, software, marketing, sales, traffic, all of that. And then just for hosting the charger, they get to earn economic incentives for participating in the network. When that happens, transparency was paramount, and because all of these infrastructure will be sitting on a, for use for public, we needed to have a layer that manages the authenticity of it and the credibility of it. So we brought in blockchain, and then deepin became the default solution for a problem statement that we have. So instead of searching for a solution, we kind of built a solution, and then that fits the blockchain narrative perfectly, because there's no other use case as good as the charging infra that's so good, so perfectly fit for the blockchain use case. So that's how we got into blockchain, by the way.
So I'm going to break it up a little bit because we might have listeners that are very familiar with the terms, and then we might have individuals that are just kind of starting out here. So let's start from the ground level. So we're going to work backwards. So at the ground level, you have a parking space, you have your tech there. So how do you visualize it? What would someone see? And if they were coming into, let's say, a mall or a place where this is, how would I agree with you. One of the electric, vehicle area is growing, but one of the concerns is, well, how many miles can I drive before I have to charge? And are there charging stations there so I can actually go from point A to point Z? So what you're saying is very true. There needs to be the infrastructure, and which will also propel more sales and also help the environment. But what would someone see in a mall or somewhere where they might come?
So I'll take a very small step back and give you a slightly larger overview of this.
Yeah.
So the way to look at this, to highly simplify it, is it becomes an Airbnb for charging stations. Basically, that's basically it. So if you're already running a Airbnb, or if you have an extra parking space and with power, because the charging stations that we have for the AC chargers are 7 kilowatt, 11 kilowatt, and 3 kilowatt. That goes into a regular plug point, a 240 volt plug point, the one that runs your washing machine, say, the one that can plug in the garage. So if you're running Airbnb for charging station, all you need to do is get a charger and install it. It takes less than an hour to get started, and then your location starts appearing on the map, and the user has the ability to switch on and switch off the availability based on when they're around. So if they're around, not around, they're not interested in hosting, they could just turn it off. It won't even appear on the map. But if they feel that, okay, today I'm okay for someone to come and charge, I'll switch it on. And then they also have the ability to set their own pricing depending on surge pricing or dates, etc., etc. And basically, that's as simple as that. And our B2B partnerships are slightly more exciting in the sense where we deploy bulk chargers, fast chargers, and slow chargers combinations at malls or shopping centers, restaurants, any public space, even stores. And users, anyone with a electric car, can just use our tracking browser app. We don't even need to download an app right now. You can just go to the browser, check the map, go directly and start charging through a simple WhatsApp message. Basically, you don't even need to download an app.
So what I'm hearing is that in addition to the, like you explained, the business side, individuals who have access to extra spaces can also participate in this. So,
Yes.
So that allows individuals to be able to earn. What would they be earning?
So it depends. They also have the flexibility and the freedom to set their own pricing. So we have users who can earn as little as, let's say, $400, $500 a month, all the way up to like $2,000 a month. Also, it depends on how they want to structure it, whether it's a fast charger or a slow charger. Generally, AC chargers are slightly slightly like they take a longer to charge the car, but fast chargers are slightly more expensive, but the ROI is much faster. So someone who has like a space outside of a restaurant, let's say, that can house like, let's say, five
Mhm.
cars, can opt to set up a fast charger, and then they have they can make up to like $3,000-4,000 a month, depending on how many parking lots they have, and if it's a dual gun charger or a single gun charger. But the ballpark would be, let's say, anywhere average would be about $600-700 for a slow charger, ideally.
So would they
That's
be earning,
essentially.
no, I love this. Would they be earning in fiat or cryptocurrency?
Actually, this is great because the opportunity that we provide is that they earn both. They own both because for every this is we are Decharge is built on a use case that is not pure speculation. It is real world value. So we
Right.
have users coming in with real world cars and real world charging, which they're paying for anyway, anywhere else. We're just incentivizing them to come and charge at our charging stations, which means that they get a real world revenue share from the fiat payments that we receive, but also they receive token emission or point payments through our incentive network incentives for based on uptime or usage or marketing or other participation incentives. So they earn both ways.
They earn both ways. That's awesome because for a lot of those that are within our space, or who are learning about it, they're learning about blockchain as the underlying technology, but they're also sometimes not understanding that crypto is different than blockchain. There's two
Yes,
different there's, yes, you have a blockchain that will create the crypto, but you don't always have to have crypto involved. So
exactly.
no, that I see a lot of possibilities of this, being expanded. Now, is it something that is portable, or is it a hard type of inline infrastructure? Because if it's portable, then I also see I know a lot of times I take an Uber, and the Ubers are electric, and they have to find an electric station to charge. So is it portable, or is it something that's kind of always kind of in one place?
Okay, actually, it's a very good question because a lot of people don't understand this part, and there's a confusion between the adapter and the charger.
Yeah,
We are actually a charging company, so we have our charger is fixed to the point of electricity source.
got
So
it.
it draws electricity and then it pumps it into your car, and so it has to be fixed. It cannot be moving.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm so excited about this question is because we are working on announcing a prototype, very close to announcing a prototype version 1 of a portable charger. But it's not, you cannot carry it around as much because it's got a battery in it. It won't power as much, but it's enough to give you like a good 50 miles or 60 miles just in case you're stranded somewhere. That's the first
Exactly.
case. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the first use case. The second use case also is we are working on a slightly more advanced prototype of portable, especially for malls and parking spaces, where it's a mobile, AI-driven mobile robot that just goes around the parking lot charging cars.
I love it. I love it. I know that I've been at some of the conferences, and there's these little like dog robots that are,
Oh, yeah, I love those. I love these. I love these cars. So
but
yeah,
the idea of actually having something rotate and having a sense that the car needs to be charged, I think is brilliant from the perspective that you sometimes don't know. Like with our I'm looking at my cell phone, you don't realize that your battery is about to go, and
exactly.
you might not have the charger with you.
Exactly, and there's a much bigger vision around it, uh, and I'll probably come to that later when we talk about vision. But the idea is human intervention for charging should not be at the level that drives range anxiety that we are facing right now. So for all the users who have electric cars, they face range anxiety. They don't know when they'll find the next charger, when they'll be out of battery. They should be able to just park the car, use our app or browser, and say, okay, I need charging, and then we just navigate to their car in the parking lot, and then we have a machine to machine authentication that works. When the machine goes closer, again, that runs on blockchain, and the charger, sends a message to the car saying that, hey, I'm here, authenticate me. And then the car opens the charging port and then we plug in the charger. All of this is machine to machine. There's no human intervention involved.
No, I like the idea of what you're saying in terms of the map, because it will create less stress for everyone who decides that they want to invest in an electric car, um, or even a hybrid. But so to create this infrastructure, you've had to go through a lot of development. How old is the company? Explain a little bit about the tech side of it and the infrastructure that you had to create. You've mentioned a lot of different countries. So obviously, there's been a lot of development. Now, also, let's go back to the idea of why you thought that it had to be on blockchain. Again, I agree that it's very transparent, but why was that important?
Okay, great. I love this question because answering why blockchain is important kind of checks the boxes for everything else.
Hmm.
I'll start off with the grander, slightly midterm vision that we're looking at, and then it'll kind of plug itself into the entire narrative, so you'll understand very well. So we are not just here to sell chargers. That's not the vision that we have. Chargers are integral part of what we do, but that's just the beginning of the story, right? What we're building is something called as the energy internet, which is a much bigger scope. Just like how we are now speaking on Hangout on this chat, it was possible because of the internet, and internet is basically exchange of bits of data.
Yeah.
Similarly, energy, what we believe is that energy is also fungible, and it can have a lot of use cases, especially because it can there is something that's similar to internet that can be built on top of energy. That's what we're working towards. Now, a simple example to illustrate something like that is look at self-driving cars, right? I mean, we're looking at self-driving cars already, and whenever I'm in the US, when I travel, whether it's New York or San Francisco, I was there for 11 days the month before, and I've not touched the steering wheel, not even once. It was driving by itself all around.
Wow.
Why I'm mentioning this? Yeah, no, it's amazing. Why I'm mentioning this is because the future is all about self-driving cars and robo taxis. Because right now a car is seen as a cost center. You buy the car, 80% of the time it's sitting there idle. You're driving to work, probably parking it there and coming back from work to home, but 80% of the time it's just parked there. There's nothing happening. But it's going to change, and it's going to become where to drop you in your at your office, and then it's going to go around making money for you while you're working, and then it'll come pick you up and drop you back at home when you summon it. So this is going to be the future of mobility and micro mobility as we know it. But when this happens, and the car is, let's say, 100 miles away in a different suburb dropping somebody off, and it's out of charge, what happens? Then it has to call you, and then you have to go all the way and fill it up and then come back, right? That defeats the purpose of autonomy and defeats the purpose of economic value that it drives. So what ideally has to happen to support this kind of a future is to have infrastructure that supports this economy, where when the car navigates to the nearest charging station using intelligence, using AI, which is already there today, and then the charger is also intelligent in the sense that there's a machine economy that is working. It's a machine to machine transaction, and if it's somewhere in the middle, like in the middle of nowhere and nobody's around, you don't have to have like a human sitting there, because that's not cost effective at all. It's going to like really blow up the cost for the whole thing. So you'll have a robotic charger that is when the car gets there, they're going to authenticate themselves using APIs, and then this authentication layer requires blockchain. Now the car will verify if the data, if the charger is compromised or not, and if it is secure, and the charger will verify if the car is secure or not, and then they will both give access to each other to start plugins, and the transaction happens. Now all of this information is again written on the chain, and then there's a signature that happens, and this signature is then the basis of the payment that is transferred from the car to the charger.
Ah,
All of this is on the entire machine economy runs on chain.
so for those that are new to blockchain, there's what's called smart contracts. So have you built, so in your smart contracts, you've already kind of coded in
Yeah.
how this transfer will happen?
Yes, yes. So our smart contracts are very, very robust. In fact, they are built for the machine economy. They're built for machine to machine. And we are not just talking about cars. We're talking about robots. We are talking about drones. We are talking about EV tolls. All the future is going to be electric, and the opportunity is, let's look at Nvidia. Jensen says there's going to be 100 million robots in the next 10 years, right? Doing manual. All of these require charging. They're all
Yeah.
electric. And where do they find charging infra? And the only way we can build charging infra is through a decentralized approach. Not There's no use case where a centralized company can come and deploy charging infra at this rate. Probably won't be as successful because they'll be limited either by geography or by capital. Because some companies might hit a wall at $1 billion fundraise. Some companies might hit at a $10 million fund. We don't know. But why decentralization works is because everybody can participate in the ecosystem. And if you look at it right now, let's take ExxonMobil or British Petroleum. They make a lot of money every day, right? All of this is going back into one company, centralized. But imagine as mobility changes and everybody's electric, people will spend the same amount of money, similar amount of money for mobility, that will go back to the ecosystem and not to one centralized stakeholder. So the wealth that is created is immense. The cost of electricity is lower, so they might not be making as much as the oil companies do, but there'll be 10 times more vehicles, like vehicles, drones, robots, that consumption will be over the roof. And then distributed charging is the only way. So now coming back a layer from your question, we wanted to talk about tech. We've been building this tech since early 2023. We've done a lot of R&D, we've done a lot of groundwork. We know how this works. We've built a lot of intelligence into our chargers. We have worked across multiple regions. Now we standardized it so that the internal technology, wherever it is in the world, is going to be standardized and not have to change over and over again. And also wanted to make it very cost effective for the ROI that we're giving to people. We did a lot of testing. Now we are looking at entering and scaling rapidly in the Middle East markets and Southeast Asian markets. And yeah, so this is
Yeah.
what we do.
No, I definitely see a lot of potential there. A few questions popped into my mind while you were talking. I have solar on my house. Um, you talk about, the growth of the electric side. How are you also looking at not just, how are you looking at integrating solar and other combinations to make it more eco-friendly? And so what are you visualizing from that perspective?
Wow, yeah, I love all of your questions. They're very spot on, very, very, very thoughtful questions. Thanks for asking that, because it helps me elaborate our execution strategy much better. So we work with both forward integration and backward integration. Forward integration is when we work on the demand side of things like cars, robots, drones, EV tolls, etc. But the beauty lies in the fact where we aggregate the renewable energy from distributed energy resources. It could be solar, it could be wind, it could be any renewable. End
Yeah.
of the day, the decentralization approach of this really, really catapults into economic success, because like EV charging and building charging infrastructure is the best way to monetize any solar installation. If you look at the solar installation, if you are saying that, okay, I'm just going to buy a solar, install it to offset the cost of my consumption in my house, maybe you're making the cost of the electricity that you are paying to the discom, right? But this is a very big opportunity for all the solar ecosystem participants
Mm-hmm.
for peer-to-peer energy trading. This is
Exactly.
where you can add a markup. Say if your solar is generating 40 kilowatts a day, I'm just giving, say, let's say big one, you can sell 40 kilowatts a day at 50 cents a unit, and people will still buy, because they're buying renewable energy, clean energy from you. And in fact, the grid encourages this, like governments encourage this, because it's not loading the grid as much. So if people have distributed installations of charging infra, which is the first step, we encourage them to integrate backwards and set up solar, because they can do a lot of energy generation and then offset it at a much higher cost. So instead of earning 10 cents or 5 cents per kilowatt, and for a full charge of a car making 20, making $20 or something, you end up making 50 cents per kilowatt into 40. So that's quite a bit of money, it's like a lot of money. And that's a good business model too, because you're invested in the solar to generate renewable energy and you're selling it. People are even okay to pay 80 cents per kilowatt. uh, in Sweden, when we were there, a full charge of 40 kilowatts, 45 kilowatts, we paid, I think, $45 for a 38 kilowatt session. It's one session, it's not kilowatt based. So almost paid $1.10 per session per kilowatt. And imagine doing that with solar. Like if a car comes and charges full, there's an
Mhm.
opportunity to make $50 per session. And the cost is literally basically nothing, right? I mean, it happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about all the ways that this can help. I know that I'm involved with different charities, and I'm thinking, which I'll talk to you after we finish our recording, how this can help support, funding them,
Love it.
from an eco-friendly area, but also to help them with their mission. There's we in our community, we're always about giving back, but we also have to think about how do we generate the profit to give back. And so if we can do it in a way that is both supportive of our environment as well as supportive of the individuals, then it's definitely a win-win. I mean, so there's definitely a lot of potential. And you know uh, you're a, you're a member of the Maryland Blockchain Association. So for those that are listening, definitely there's going to be other opportunities for you to kind of network and reach out. And the contact information will definitely be on the blog below. What other, I know we've talked about a lot of different things, but what other last minute thoughts? And we're going to have more than one conversation because this is
Yeah.
a really important talk. But what last minute things do you want to leave for everyone who's listening, so that way they can think about what steps they might need to explore in their own life?
If it can, in the perspective of clean energy and charging, is that the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I would definitely recommend. I mean, even as a friend, I would definitely recommend that you set up a charging infrastructure if you have access to a parking space. I know some people, after understanding the opportunity, they've gone to their local 7-Eleven or the local super grocery store and said, "Can I rent your charging? Can I rent your parking space? And then I want to host a charger there." So that's also happening right now as we speak. The reason being that as we go, there's going to be like a hockey stick growth, because people will start wanting this energy because they have to fill their cars up. And we're not just talking about cars. It's not long before robots come into the picture. Now the grids are very old. When we talk about grids, whether it's a US grid or whether it's a grid for India, or even, they're all very old. They're all 50 years old. They can't take much load. If you have all of these vehicles and robots charging on it, it'll collapse. So the government incentivizes off-grid activities like what I've talked about a few minutes ago when we spoke about the DERs and charging. It's a microgrid,
Mhm.
distributed energy resource. So we are working with partners who have gateways, and even there's so many interesting things to it that makes it so economically viable, and also a great opportunity. Plus, bringing a whole revolution in clean energy is because you have these that are gateway that monitors penalties and peak charging. Because imagine the whole city coming back from work and at 7 p.m. switching on the electric, switching on their heaters, switching on geysers, switching on
Yeah.
electric charging, switching on, all of that adds to the grid. It'll collapse.
Well,
So
you see that during the summertime when the air
yeah,
conditioners all start.
all of them start, and then that increases the cost of electricity. So if you're able to host this charging infrastructure, it allows ecosystem participants, especially fleets. Like, no one's talking about fleets. There are so many last mile delivery fleets, supply chain fleets, even delivery fleets, who need access to charging infra. In the next 5 years, all fleets in the world are going to be mostly electric fleets, because they reduce about 15% of their costs by not going the fuel way. They all need charging, but they can't centralize it because they get to pay penalty usage, because they can't. If imagine charging 100 vehicles in one location, it's about 4 megawatts of consumption, right? So they can't do that. So they want to depend on decentralized locations, which is a great advantage for decentralized participants. So this is a starting point, and once you set this up, slowly work backwards and set up solar and wind to offset it, so that the energy that's being produced is basically free of cost. But someone like us will be driving traffic to you guys, so that it's being busy all the time, and then just basically generating free passive income over time, but while being mindful of two important things: one, saving the environment, and two, helping the government power more infrastructure and more growth with less stress to the grid. So this might be like it's a win-win for everybody involved. So that's my suggestion.
So thank you so much. I know that, as I mentioned, we're going to have more conversations that will be recorded so people can learn about where you're going, what you're doing, and other ideas on how to kind of incorporate this. We're very excited to have you supporting the Maryland Blockchain Association in the backyard of, just what Maryland is doing and in the blockchain tech community. So for everyone who's listening, definitely remember that we do have our monthly Maryland virtual meetups the first Monday of every month. And definitely sign up for our newsletter so you can see all the other great things that are happening within the space, to include AI, innovative tech, and everything else that is happening both in the universities as well as in the business community. And one last thing I don't want to forget, because again, it is live now. The Blockchain Legal Institute Legal Tech Hackathon is live on DoraHack. So if you're listening and you are a developer and you would like to win possibly $32,000 worth of bounties, go over to either the Maryland Blockchain Association or bli.tools and register. We have Constellation and ICP and Story and other protocols hopping on. So this is a way that you can help. And again, from the environmental side, there's, legal tech that needs to be kind of thought of there. So you can find your passion point. So thank you so much for being on today. Really appreciate your sharing. Very excited to have you. And everyone, have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Jacqueline.
Sure.
Excited to be here.